Step forward, 2 steps back. On Friday, we were greeted with the news that Officer Van Dyke, former Chicago police officer Officer Van Dyke, was convicted of second-degree manslaughter for the murder, second-degree murder for the murder of Laquan McDonald. Let's be clear, it took 4 years for that to come to fruition. And initially, the tape was being suppressed by the city bureaucrats. And when the judge allowed it to be released, they lost a police chief and they lost a district attorney. So it's natural that he would be sent to jail. I will take my victories where I can get them. But at the same time, the young man, the police officer that killed Tamir Rice, was hired in another Ohio police department. Isn't it funny? He was formerly at the Independence Police Department in Ohio. They fired him in the middle of academy. He had a nervous breakdown. They said no amount of training can make him a viable officer. Then Cleveland hires him. 9 months later, he shoots an unarmed boy, Tamir Rice. He is fired for gross misconduct, and years later, he is hired by another police department. The same thing, the young one, Alton Rhodes, a young man who got killed outside of Pittsburgh. The police officer that killed him was fired early in February of that year, then rehired, and within 90 minutes, killing an unarmed black man. It happened again in Bakersfield. A police officer is fired for being racist, fired back, shoots an unarmed man in front of the Walmart. Here's a pattern we see developing. People are what they are. Either people don't know that these police officers have been convicted of all these things, or they don't care. Now, if you do something wrong, for instance, you're a sex offender, you have to register on a national registry. Everybody who wants to deal with you has to know that this is what you've been charged with. You're guilty of. If you get a dishonorable discharge, that follows you around. If you are fired for some of the things these men have been fired for, police officers and departments should know it. And if they do something else and commit a further infraction, they should be financially liable for it. Whenever something happens in the community, a police matter, they look for who? The usual suspects. And when something like this happens, when somebody's shot or killed, you can tell in their history that this is the place they're going. This is where they're leaning to. We could avoid a lot of disasters if people like this wouldn't get fired. Darren Wilson, he was who killed Mike Brown. He was in a police department that was so racist that it had to be disbanded. No wonder he's killing an unarmed black kid. We don't have to tell the future. We just look at people's records. The best indicator of what somebody will do is what they have. There are no more excuses. If you can Google all the things and you know about anything I might have done in my past, why don't we know about them? Why don't we have a nationally, you register as a sex offender when you committed certain kinds of crime. And the same thing should be true of police officers. If you've been fired for a certain thing, that should be on your record for everybody to see. And if they don't access it and that police officer does something further, that department should be liable for it. You putting a murderer on the street. This man murdered a little boy who was unarmed after being told he was not a viable officer. Now we know that he wasn't, and he's hired by another police officer, part-time. A part-time, no-good police officer is worth no time at all. That's a little note from the GED section. We got the Jazz Report coming up in 15 minutes. It's the D.L. Hughley Show.